In 1980, the median home in America cost $47,000. The median household earned about $17,700 a year. That is a price-to-income ratio of roughly 2.7 to 1. A single ordinary income, saved responsibly, bought a house in under 3 years. Today, the median home costs over $412,000, and the median household earns around $75,000. The ratio has more than doubled to nearly 5.5 to 1. The math did not break by accident, and in the next 9 minutes, I will show you exactly where the money went instead. Start with the clearest symptom: who is actually buying homes now? In 1981, the median first-time homebuyer was 29 years old. According to the National Association of Realtors, by 2024 that number had climbed to 38 years old, the oldest ever recorded. 38 is not a first-time buyer age by accident. It is the age it now takes to accumulate enough capital in a system that was not designed to make you wait this long. So where did the money actually go? Follow the wealth share, not the headlines. Federal Reserve data on the distribution of household wealth shows the top 1% held roughly 22 to 25% of total American wealth in the early 1980s. Today, that same top 1% holds close to a third of all wealth in the country. Meanwhile, the bottom 50% of American households, more than 65 million families, hold about 2.5% of total wealth. 2.5%, split across half the country. This did not happen because the bottom half stopped working. Worker productivity in the United States has risen more than 70% since 1979, according to the Economic Policy Institute. Hourly compensation for typical workers, adjusted for inflation, rose a little over 10% in that same window. Americans got dramatically better at producing value. Almost none of that value showed up in their paychecks. It showed up somewhere else. It showed up, in large part, in executive compensation. In 1965, the average chief executive officer earned about 20 times what the average worker at their company made. By 2023, that ratio had grown to roughly 290 times. Not because executives started working 15 times harder. Because the share of company earnings that used to flow to a wide base of employees increasingly flows to a narrow layer at the very top, along with shareholders, through mechanisms like stock buybacks that convert corporate profit directly into share price rather than wages. Now overlay housing on top of this, because housing is where the wealth gap becomes a wall instead of a number on a chart. A house is not just shelter. For the median American family, it is the primary vehicle for building wealth across a lifetime. When home prices detach from wages the way they have, you are not just making it harder to buy a house. You are shutting an entire generation out of the main on-ramp to the wealth that older generations used to retire, to pass down, to survive medical emergencies without going bankrupt. The mortgage math makes this even starker. In 1980, mortgage rates were brutal, often 13 to 16%, but home prices were low enough relative to income that the monthly burden was still manageable for a single median earner. Today, rates are lower than 1980's peak, but prices are so disconnected from wages that the monthly burden, as a share of income, is now higher in most major metro areas than it was during the 2006 housing bubble, right before it collapsed. None of this is conspiracy. It is documented, and it is bipartisan economists doing the documenting. It is decades of policy choices, a tax code that taxes wages higher than investment gains for most working families, a housing supply that has not kept pace with population growth in the metro areas. Where jobs actually are, and a corporate profit structure that increasingly rewards capital over labor. Each choice, on its own, sounds technical. Stacked together over 45 years, they produced two Americas that are aging at completely different speeds. Here is the part that should actually concern you, whichever side of this gap you are on. An economy this concentrated is not just unfair. It is structurally fragile. The top 10% of earners now drive roughly half of all consumer spending in the country. When prosperity narrows this much, the entire economy balances on the spending decisions of a shrinking slice of the population. That is not a stable foundation. That is a tower built on a smaller and smaller base. So what do you actually do with a chart like this? You stop measuring your progress against a 1980 economy that no longer exists, and you start measuring the actual on-ramps available today: employer retirement matches, index funds, any form of ownership you can access, because the data across the last century says clearly that wealth compounds through ownership, not wages alone. And you stay informed about who benefits from each policy debate you hear about, because the gap you are living through was not inevitable. It was built, one decision at a time, and it can be unbuilt the same way. If you want more breakdowns where the data does the talking, the numbers behind the headlines, the mechanisms behind the outcomes, subscribe and hit the bell, because I cover this every week. And tell me in the comments, could you afford the house you grew up in, at today's price, on your current income? Be honest. See you in the next one.